This week we will hear from the Gospel of Luke, the parable of the prodigal son. Now, in typical parable fashion, there's always something that happens before this parable is told, something that happens as Jesus is out preaching and teaching. And so there is this instance where he is teaching, and the writer tells us that the tax collectors and the sinners are coming to listen to Jesus. And also in typical fashion, who also is there, but the scribes and the Pharisees, watching Jesus, listening to Jesus, paying attention to who Jesus is drawing close to himself. And they start to grumble, saying, this fellow Jesus welcomes sinners and eats with them. Now, this was a big deal in a culture where dinner invitations and seats of honor were exclusive placeholders for people in society. The fact that Jesus's dinner guests were the people that were not to be invited to the party, that was something that they were grumbling about. And in response to that, Jesus tells a few different parables, but the one that he tells is that we're going to hear this Sunday is the one of the prodigal son, where the father has two sons, and the younger one asks the father for his share of the property and takes his inheritance, goes off to a distant land, and pretty much squanders everything. And he has no choice but to return because he ends up being destitute and is eating with the pigs. And he thinks, maybe at least I can go back to my father's house and be a hired hand. And I love this in the text where it says that from a distance, the son was drawing close to his father's house, and from a distance, his father sees him. And I love that because it makes me think that this father was waiting and watching and hoping, keeping an eye out for this son that had been away, hoping that he would return. And this father, upon seeing the son, runs to him and embraces him, throws a robe on him, gives him this ring that gives some sort of authority and trust, and creates this huge celebration because he has returned. And the elder son, who has always done the right thing, always worked hard, didn't get these things, and starts to complain to the father, even saying to the point, look, I've worked like a slave for you. I've worked super hard and I don't get any of these things. It doesn't seem fair from his point of view, that this person who squandered everything away gets treated like royalty. And the father responds by telling the elder son, you have always been with me, but today we are going to celebrate because your brother who was dead has come to life. What was lost has now been found. And I think that oftentimes we can look at this story and think, of the times where maybe we have been like the elder son, where we have this kind of justice frame of mind or fairness in mind in our own lives. Or maybe we have felt like the younger son who, made poor choices. But I think that if we leave it at just that and where we put the story, we're leaving out the important part, which is what Jesus is pointing to, the character of God. The character of a God who sees us. The God who continually draws near to us, runs to us, loves us in what would be considered by society's standards reckless, radical. That is God's love. God who went to a cross and Jesus who opened his arms to the world. That was radical love, so that we can experience the gift of God's love and grace, forgiveness and mercy. And I think about in the reading we're going to hear this Sunday, where Paul is talking about the ministry of reconciliation, that this is what God's character is about, is not only just loving the world, but also reconciling. The ministry of reconciliation, making us right so that we can be in relationship with one another and with God. And Paul calls us to be ambassadors of Christ. That sometimes this love of God, it is, crossing boundaries. And the important thing is to trust that this love is a gift for us, but also to trust that this love is a gift for others as well. And that we can be agents of this message of a reckless love that God has for us, a God that will never stop loving us, a God that is always there with us. And that is the message that Jesus communicates and why he welcomed tax collectors and sinners. Because God will cross boundaries to be with us. Thanks be to God for that. See you this Sunday.